Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. Today I am wrapping up the books I have read in the month of August 2023. Now, I had big plans for August. I was off from the job for a couple of weeks, 10 days, and I planned to just read. And I did read, but I just read one series, basically. And the rest of the time I had planned to still read a lot. However, I also decided to renovate some rooms in my house, to tidy up a lot of things, to spend a lot of time going to the cinema and with friends and family, and it became a bit hectic. And I also discovered video games again. So I started playing video games, and these reduced the amount of time I could read. So yeah, basically this is to say I had big plans for August that turned out to be not that big in terms of how much reading I've done. So I'm gonna show you all the books I didn't read at all in the month of August, which are the majority of the ones that are on my TBR. But before I'm doing that, I am currently almost halfway through The Good House. So I'm reading these and really enjoying it. That's why it's okay, that's why I really like her writing. And I'm also listening to Bronze Age, the next installment in the Red Rising saga, on audiobook. And I am like 10 hours away from the ending. Those are my current reads. And before I go ahead with anything else, I have family coming over for the first 10 days of September, and I have 10 days packed with stuff to do, activities, and I might not be able to put this up until mid of September. So you might be seeing these very late in the month. I apologize, I just didn't have time to sit and edit for hours. Okay, so books I couldn't start. Salt to the Sea. I couldn't get around to The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, unfortunately, and another one that I'm really bummed about is Hamnet. I couldn't read these this month. I also couldn't get around to read Silver in the Bone. Another big bummer, I couldn't continue with The Diabolic, so I didn't read The Empress. I didn't read Stiletto, and I didn't read Twin Crowns. I couldn't read Pure. I couldn't read Spin the Dawn. It's a beautiful cover. I couldn't read Song of the Forever Rains. And finally, I couldn't read the YA Fairloot for the month of July, I believe, which is Threads That Bind, which is another stunning cover. I'm gonna link down below the unboxing for this. It's stunning. So yeah, couldn't get around to reading those. So you might ask, Eva, all your TBR is here, so what did you read? Well, not that much, but I did read a whole series, so I'm kind of happy about that. However, I've done a whole review for the series. I'm gonna do from the least enjoyable read to the most enjoyable read. However, on the plus side, this month, because I didn't read much apart from that series, I enjoyed quite everything I've read on top of the series. So yeah, I'm gonna start at the bottom, but the bottom is still quite high in terms of quality. So I've counted the series as a 1. So I've technically read 10 books, 5 were in the series, and then I read 4 other books on top of that. So I will put here numbers up to 5, just because the series I've considered as 1. So at number 5, we've got Chloe Gong, the debut adult fantasy by the author, and this is Immortal Longings. And again, I've done an unboxing for this stunning edition by Fairloot, and I'm just gonna give you a sneak peek of these. This is a retelling of Antony and Cleopatra, the play by Shakespeare, and specifically you follow Calla Tulemi. She is the heir, or she's the daughter of the ex-royal family. I mean, the family is still in power. Her uncle is ruling over this kind of very cyberpunk or altered carbon vibes. Okay, this is the kind of city, the technology is way older than it might be in altered carbon or cyberpunk, but the idea of it's the kind of cities and the kind of vibe, a lot altered carbon vibes they show on Netflix. So her uncle is ruling over this kingdom, However, she has killed her parents, who were the original royal. And so she has killed the parents, but she didn't manage to kill her uncle, and she killed them. And you know this from the beginning. She has killed them because they were tyrants and oppressing their people. However, because she couldn't kill the uncle, the people are still suppressed. So she is now on a task of meeting her uncle and killing him and finishing the job she started years ago. And on the other side, you've got Anton, who is trying to pay his debt because he's been keeping alive but in a coma, so paying the hospital bills for his first lover since they were children. So she's in a coma and he's paying the hospital bills, but unfortunately they're quite expensive. So they take part in these yearly games where you have to kill each other and only one remains standing, and whoever remains standing can meet the king and also receive a hefty money prize. This is how they meet. They all both take part in this tournament, Kala to meet and kill her uncle with that goal in mind, and Anton with the goal of winning the money. And their lives intertwine. So it's a bit of like a Hunger Games scenario in a sense, but it takes place all over the city. So they're not like in the Hunger Games in a specific park or place. And they do body swaps. So people are able to change bodies, maintaining their soul. And there are a bunch of rules behind that. I have not read Antony and Cleopatra before, and so I know vaguely the historical figures, but I've not read the play. So a lot of feedbacks I've heard about this book is if you've read the play, you might enjoy this way more than I did. I ended up giving like a 3.5, 75, don't remember exactly. So it wasn't bad at all. I quite enjoy it. I thought you can tell that the author was a YA writer a bit. She's also very young, the author, and some of the YA writing style things come through. I do think the characterizations and the exploration of the lore and the city could have been done way more, and it would have made this book more compelling for me. I was very interested in the beginning, and it kind of lost me in the middle for a good chunk. I found a bit dragging at times, and then it picked up again in the end, and I did like the end enough to say potentially I will check out more. I will potentially continue on with the series. Will I spend a lot of money on it? Depends on what Fairyloot does with it, because let's be honest, if Fairyloot keeps this up, I might have to just purchase the sequel. I'm not very interested though to spend a lot of money on the sequel. Thus far, I do think the author has a lot of potential. I do like the character of Kala and Anton. I just believe that, you know, this is sold to you as a love story, which I didn't see much of. I wasn't that sold on them together. I wasn't that invested in their love story. I'm more interested in what happens after the end. I did like some of the side characters. So yeah, again, overall it was a mixed bag with good potential. So again, I would put it on the higher spectrum if I did still enjoy it enough to say I'll check out more. I'm curious to know what you thought if you've read these, because I think it's quite controversial, and I think ultimately I kind of stand in the middle where it was okay. It wasn't that good, it wasn't horrible, it was okay. As Late of Shadows, this is the sequel to An Unkindness of Magician. I had listened to the first one on audiobook and truly loved it. So when I found out that there was a sequel, which was around 5 to 6 hours long on Scribd, I just jumped on it. And I enjoyed this enough, but not nearly as much as I enjoyed the prequel. Sorry, not the prequel, the first book in the series. I don't know if this is going to be extended to a trilogy or it's just a duology. I do honestly think that although I didn't mind going back in this world, she could have finished with just the first book, unless she's going to extend this to a whole trilogy. The second book didn't feel much needed, felt a bit like a money grabber, just me being completely honest. But the first book, An Unkindness of Magician, it's kind of a urban fantasy where you follow magicians that have to take part in this tournament, and the way this works is that magic is hidden from humans. You know, magicians have powers and they belong to different houses, and these houses, they're alive, the houses, so they can communicate with the magicians, and they are like each house as a ruling family. And then in the first book is this deathly game where the magicians from different houses have to participate in order to decide which house rules them all. Something of the sort has been at least 3 years since I've listened to the first one. But I really enjoyed the dynamics of the first book. I found it was very refreshing for urban fantasy, and I really enjoyed the character of Sydney and a bunch of others, and the idea of these houses that are alive, that can communicate, and the different factions that you follow. The sequel, I still enjoyed Sydney. I still enjoyed their writing. The plot was okay. I think it was a very short book compared to the first one. I think it just felt unnecessary. Like, they bring back part of the plot and it's very much linked to book number 1, but it did feel like a repetition that wasn't necessarily needed. I said that I didn't mind, spending 5 hours in this world again. I will check out the third book if it ever comes out. It was okay. I gave it probably 3.75 stars, something of the sort. Didn't mind it, but objectively, I don't think it was so necessary. Okay, let's move on to Piranesi. I finally read these. So Piranesi, I got into this not knowing the synopsis, and I do generally believe that maybe it's perhaps for the best if you don't. I would just say that you follow Piranesi, who is living in this gigantic mansion, in this gigantic house, and this house is made of rooms and corridors that have all of them peculiarities to it, and there are also natural elements that play a part in these, and so you follow Piranesi going through this labyrinth kind of and living there, and then you go on the journey of discovering who Piranesi is, what the house is, and etc, etc. So this was unexpected, definitely unexpected. I went into this thinking from the cover, and now I had heard speaking about this. This is a mythological book about, a Greek myth retelling or something of the sort, and truly it is kind of not. It is to a certain extent, but very mildly. Like, it's not the kind of mythological retelling or ancient Greek retelling I'm used to. It's more, I would say in a sense, I saw this as more like a dark academia book. And that caught me by surprise. What I did love was the writing, and I understand why this is a winner of a Women's Prize Fiction is because of the way this is written. It feels like you are reading a dream, like it feels dreamy, it feels so fantastical. So I really like her writing, and I will pick up more by the author. I do own her other series, which is the massive Mr. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell book. I own it and I will read it because I think there's a lot of potential. I also liked a lot of the hidden messages in this book, and the kind of concepts I think that she was bringing to light with a very peculiar writing. So it's not for everyone, the writing, I guess. It's full of, I perceived as very metaphorical, but in a very peculiar sense. So I did enjoy that. In terms of the plot, immediately when I finished this book, I didn't love it, and I was like, okay, this is not gonna be my favorite book of the year. A lot of people say that this is the best thing I've ever read, or among those, and I don't get it. But the more I left it, the more distance there was before, between myself actually reading this book and me thinking about this book once I read it, the more I appreciated the plot more. I gave it like a full 4 stars. I overall enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I was expecting. And the plot was interesting, but I don't know, maybe because it was so out of what I was expecting, that why it didn't met my expectations. That's why it's not 5 stars. However, it's a book that I honestly do think that you appreciate way more if you put a bit of distance between you and the book. The Bitter Twins. I got around to read the sequel to The Ninth Reign. This is an epic high fantasy. I've read the first book in this trilogy a couple of months back, I believe. In the first book, you do follow a bunch of characters trying to find out more about an enemy that's been coming back over and over again, trying to conquer Earth and the different subspecies that are currently living on Earth. And these enemies are very sly, and these enemies are usually fought by the Eberons, which are like one race that's currently living on Earth, and their magic beasts. They are born from this magic tree. However, the last time the enemy came around, the Eberons lost due to certain kind of damage their tree, so no more war beasts are born, and now they're afraid that if enemy comes back, the Eberons that have been decimated since the tree died and the beasts are no longer born, they are just afraid that they can't stand up to the enemy anymore and the enemy will end up winning. So you follow different factions and different races coming together with different characters that have very different background stories coming together and trying to find more about the lore of the enemy, the origin of the enemy, and how they can protect Earth if the enemy was to ever come back. Just living very broad, but I think what really worked well in the Ninth Reign is the kind of aspect of finding out about the lore, going on this journey of discovering. So it did feel like a fantasy, but it also felt almost like a quest thriller. There was that kind of thriller side of it where you keep discovering things about the enemy and you keep having like a bit of twists here and there, together with awesome characters, awesome writing. It was just the perfect combo. And I think this second book, I would give it 4 stars. So while the first book was 5 stars for me, this did drag a bit in the beginning. It felt a bit more boring than the first book. Once we get back to a plot where we have to find out about the lore, we have to discover new things that emerge about, the origin of the Eberons and blah blah blah, without giving spoilers, that's when the book pick up again. And at some point, you have some sections of a book where are more about actual war, so a lot of actiony, and you got other section of a book where are more like discovering things and exploring these new parts of the world and so on. And that part caught my attention a lot. There is a point of view here that I am okay with, but I don't love. It just makes me feel unease, and so that point of view kind of took away a bit of enjoyment. And again, it did drag for the first 200 pages, but the characters are still there, the good writing is still there, and I can't wait to finish this trilogy. I'm so happy I'm continuing on with this. I hope I can read the 3rd book in the trilogy relatively soon, so I can kind of be done with the series, and I will check out more about the author. I like her plot structure, but overall I didn't enjoy this as much as the first one, while still enjoying it quite a lot. Okay, let's do this. Then the majority of my annual leave from my job was spent playing Hogwarts Legacy, but also reading these books. So these are the Bonds That Tie series. I had read Broken Bonds a couple of months ago. That book ends in a major cliffhanger, so I decided I would purchase the rest of the series because I knew I was gonna love it, and then I would binge read the series when I had some time off, and that's what I did. London doesn't know it's summer anyway, so it was literally raining for the first 10 days of a month, and I just spent the days on the sofa reading a book every day, or like a book every 2 days, depending on how much I was playing and doing other stuff. But I consumed the whole series, so I have read these 5 books in literally 7 days. So I'm gonna just show you the covers if you want to see the inside a bit more. I've done a whole 30-minute spoiler review for them. So this is book number 2, Savage Bonds. Sorry, they're very heavy, so I'm gonna drop them off. And then we've got book number 3, awesome covers. Blood Bonds. And then we've got Forced Bonds. And then you've got Tragic Bonds. Sorry, I'm just showing, the light is not helping, is it? And then there is the last book in the series, Unbroken Bonds. So this is a reversed RM fantasy, urban fantasy sort of series, and in the first book you follow Oleander. In this world, people have bonds. So one person, either male or female, whether is the case, they can have different soulmates, and one part of the series comes with the lack of jealousy. So if you are in a bond, even if there are 4 people in the bond, you've got a central bond, and maybe other 3 partners, they're not jealous. They accept they're all part of this bond. And the way it works is that the central bond will have sex with these other people in the bond, and when they do have sex, they enhance each other's powers. So you follow Oleander specifically in the first book. She is you know that she has a very scary power and she is on the run from someone who's chasing her. You don't know exactly what's going on there, but you know she's on the run and she doesn't want to bond. She is destined to be with 5 guys, so they draw blood and they decide that, you know, she has 5 bonds. She's the central bond, but she has these other 5 bonds, and so each cover is one of the guy. Basically, but she doesn't want to be with them. She thinks that's very risky for her to even, you know, think about enhancing her powers. So in order to not enhance her powers, she needs to be far away from them because she's destined to be with them. And in the first book, they catch up with her and they force her to go to this magic college with other people that have magic, and it's a lot of paranormal powers. Some people can turn into animals, some people can read minds, some people are healers, some have got a bit more scary powers, and she's forced to go at the college with the boys, and she's forced to stay with the boys. Some of them are quite friendly, some of them can't stand her, some of them are holding a grudge because she's left. And the first book, the dynamics were hilarious. She had a mouth on herself, she didn't want to be there, and they were forcing her to be there at the college, and she just can't take shit from anybody. Just go the extra mile to keep them apart. And the dynamics of the first book are hilarious. Like I loved them. I loved how the author characterized Oleander and all the boys. I liked how unique all the boys were in a sense, so I fell in love with the first book. And to be fair, I really enjoyed the main chunk of the series. So book 2 to book 5 I enjoy quite a lot. Book 2 is probably my second favorite. Book 1 is my favorite. Book 2 is my second favorite, and then, you know, book 3, 4 and 5 were pretty much the same. What I didn't much like is book number 6. Another book that was needed, to be fair, like in book 5 I don't want to give any spoilers, but it felt like book 6, the 6th book wasn't needed at all. It felt like she just put it out there for whatever reason, but I would have been fine with the first 5 books. I would have probably given it 5 stars overall. But because of this book, I bumped down the whole series to a 4 stars, like the book 2 to book 6 to a 4 stars. Just to let you know, this has explicit content, and I don't read erotica fantasy, but I had the best of times. I thought that the sexual tension between the characters, the romance side of this was amazing. It was so entertaining for how much, you know, it can be problematic at times, but I honestly had an amazing time. This is very far-fetched for any form of reality you can imagine, so it was easy for me to suspend belief and just really enjoy. I had a range of emotions while reading these books. I would blush sometimes because of, you know, some of the sentences that these guys can say out of the blue, and I would scream, I would have tears in my eyes. So the full range of emotions I had with this series. I will pick up more by the author if you don't care about spoilers, or to be fair, like the first, I think 10 to 15 minutes of my review is spoiler free. I'm just gonna show you better the books and so on, so you can check that out, or come back once you read it. If you're into romance fantasy, you are 18 plus. This is definitely PG-18, okay? So if you are, and then you read the series and you want to come back to here, or, you know, their review, and let me know what you thought about this series, I would love to know, because I don't know anybody who's read this and I am dying to know. My favorite boy has to be Griffin and Knox. Just so to let you know, the covers are stunning, but the boys interact with Ollie all the time, so you don't have like one book for boy, if it makes sense. Because initially I was a bit worried that I would have, you know, to get to the 6th book to get Knox book. No, that's not the case. They're just covers, and that was very much like a very nice discovery for me. But yeah, 4 stars because of the last book, which was quite frankly very bad, but all the rest of the series was so good. Okay, so the most compelling reading experience of the year has been the Broken, you know, the Bonds That Tie series. Like, I never had a series where I would just read, forgetting about eating, sleeping, or everything. So in that sense, number 1 of the year as a consuming reading experience, it's the Bonds That Tie. However, book number 1 has to be number 1, not only because how much I loved it, but how much this book is important. So number 1, I have As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. So this is the book we chose with my book club. It was my turn to pick choices. I gave them 3 choices and ultimately this was voted, and I'm so happy that this was voted in. This is the story of Salama, and sorry if I'm butchering the name. And Salama is living in Syria at the moment when you start the book, and she is torn between leaving the country with her sister-in-law who's pregnant or stay in Syria and keep helping out at the hospital. And this is just the start of this story. Oof. Boy, this book. So when I wrote down my review, I was like, on my journal, I was like, maybe I should have waited a few more days because I was feeling so raw and vulnerable after having read this in 2 days. This is extremely, like, no book in the last few years has made me cry as much as I cried while reading As Long as Lemon Trees Grow. And I've done a video a while back explaining how I rate books and how I put my 5 stars. So a 5 stars book would be something that gives me a lot of emotions, something that really makes me stop and think, or the quality is so good that I can't give anything else apart from 5 stars. So some books end up to be 5 stars, like, you know, Broken Bonds by J. Bree, which I read a few months back, like these, and they are complete, like, fictional romance, problematic stuff, but so compelling, entertaining. And some books are just quality wise and so important, and the emotional impact is so heavy that they end up having to be 5 stars for me. So this is the case of, you know, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. I was a mess when I finished this, and the only remotely negative thing I can say, and it's not truly a negative thing, because then we had a discussion with my book club and I found out that it was me guessing it and no one else said, and everybody else had loved that thing. So it was probably just me unlucky. I guessed it early on. There is something happening at one point in this book and I had seen it coming from page 1 basically. So all my other, you know, fellow book club members were like, that was amazing weather, and I was like, yeah, okay. For me it was quite obvious. That was the only thing I can think of to say. All the rest, was amazing. I believe it's a debut by the author. She is quite young. She is from Syria. I think I don't know where she's living, in USA or UK, where this is the case, but she is truly a remarkable writer. And when I see someone so young and so talented, I'm like in awe. Like, wow. This book had me ugly crying, but also helped me put life in perspective, and it reminded me how important it is sometimes to read books, not only for your entertainment or for my entertainment. I love books just as a hobby, but sometimes it's important to read books for what they stand for and for what they can teach you. And books like these made me truly want to spread the word, made me go, read this book, read this book, read this book, to everyone I meet. And this is something that the author, I think, in their afterword was like, I just want, you know, the word to spread. I want people to know, and so I am gonna shove this book down people's throats forever, probably. There is an element where you discuss immigrations, and especially a lot of immigrants, you know, a lot of people that are fleeing from war zones on boats, and because I come from Italy, and that it's a big topic in Italy because we do get a lot of refugees coming through the sea to us, and it's been heart-wrenching, and I've been always heartbroken by, you know, the amount of people that lose their lives and the politics that go behind it, and, you know, how humans can be horrible to each other, and not understanding why people would go to a certain extent and they just say, oh, this is my country, you know, go back. And I'm just like, I wish they could all read these. I don't know if they would understand from the other perspective, but it's been a topic that has been all over the place. It's been kind of with me since I can remember. It was in the news always. It's still something that, you know, in Italy, it's talked very often. So that really, really left a mark with me. It really is the part that upset me the most. It did make me feel quite powerless at times, and that's the reality of it. I am quite powerless in front of something like this, but I think it is my role to keep these people in mind, you know, to spread the word, to just I'll not allow myself to ever forget that this is going on, and also like to remember to be grateful to what I have, because not everybody is that lucky. So it really made me think a lot. It really made me stop and just realize, you know, you need to have perspective in life, you need to appreciate more, and that's something that really makes my everyday better. And also I think like it makes me like, I love to speak now about people about this book and introducing this book to other people. The character of Keenan in this, I hope I'm not butchering his name, was so lovely. The romance in these, which again, I'm not a romance reader, but in these really provided a breath of fresh air in a very like bleak situation. So I really appreciated that side of it. I found that was so sweet, their relationship, and I was so pleased by the end. I don't want to spoil anything again, but I really thought I was gonna shatter and break, and I did shatter and break in a sense, but I really liked how things were wrapped up by the author, and I really loved her afterwards. I know that she's a big fan of BTS, the K-pop band, which I am also a big fan of, and she writes in the afterword how she hopes the RM will read her book, and I'm just like, man, if I ever meet RM, which I won't, but if I ever do, I'm gonna make sure to tell him that he needs to read this book, and that's the first thing I'm gonna tell him. So it was very sweet. Afterwards, and it was an amazing book to discuss at book club. So many questions I could come up with. We spoke for 3 hours, so it was amazing. Really, honestly, go and read As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. It's just a very important book to read to begin with. Yes, it's fiction, but all the stories, so all the plot points of these, all the things, all the characters you meet, the author says that she took these from real stories, so probably she collected different stories from people around her, like her culture and weather, and she puts it all together in a book. So it's fictional but based on true stories. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for my life. I'm grateful to have read this book. I know that Fairyloot does a beautiful special edition, so I'm really hoping I get my hands on that. I had read another book by a journalist on Syria, Dispatches from Syria, which I really enjoyed as well, but this book also reminded me of keep getting, you know, information, don't accept them just ignorant and that's it, just reach out more for information, books on it, and, you know, keep Syria in my thoughts. Not prayers, unfortunately, because I'm not religious, but in my thoughts, definitely in my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what was your favorite read of the month. I would love to discuss some of these books down below if you read them. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Ciao!